Okay, well, I'm going to do number 95 on page 394. Let me read the problem. Enclosing an area with a fence, a farmer has 100 meters of fencing and wants to enclose a rectangular plot that borders a river. If the farmer does not fence the side along the river, what are the dimensions of the land enclosed if the area is 800 square meters? So let me draw a little diagram here. This is number 95 on page 394. Page 394, number 95. Okay, so we have, this is the width, and this is the length here, right? And this is the river. So we're going to have fencing here, right? And along here and along here. Okay? Now, we want to know what are the dimension of the land enclosing this area. So we know the area here is 800. Okay, 800 square meters. Now, how do we do this? Well, let's say this is the length and this is the width, right? So one side is the length and the other side is the width. So we know that length times width is equal to 800. That's the area, right? Area is equal to length times width is equal to 800. Okay, so now if we solve for W, which is the width, we have 800, right? Divide by the length. Okay, so if one side is the length, L, the other side is, the width is 800 divided by L. Now we have only one variable here. We don't have two. We got rid of the W. Now let's look at the fencing. The fencing here is, remember, we have a total of 100 meters of fencing to enclose this whole area, right? So here we know that this is 800 over L, right? So this side, which is 800 over L, plus this side, which is L, plus another 800 over L, that should be equal to 100 meters of fencing. Okay? Does that make sense here? So we have 800 over L, which is that side, plus L, which is this side right here, plus this side, which is another 800 over L. This side we are not putting any fencing on. Okay, so if we simplify this, we should be able to find the value of both L and W. So 800 over L plus 800 over L gives you what? Anybody? So 1600 over L plus L is equal to 100. Okay, everybody with me here? What I did, I combined this term and this term. Okay, so I have 800 over L plus 800 over L gives me 1600 over L plus L is equal to 100. Now, we need to get rid of the fraction here. The least common denominator in our example is L. So I'm going to multiply through by L. Both sides, if we multiply both sides of a non-zero by a non-zero number, it doesn't change it, right? So L times 1600 over L, the L cancel, I get 1600, right? So I just multiply these two. L times plus L gives me plus L squared, okay, equal to 100 over L. I'm sorry, 100L. Okay, I'm going to write on this side here. So I need to find, to solve for L, right? So I'm going to set it to be 0. Set the equation to be 0 and solve, right? Remember, we look at finding the 0 of a polynomial in the previous lesson. So I have L squared, rearranging the terms here, plus 1600 minus 100L equal to 0. Okay, so I took out a 100L on each side, so I have 0 on the right side. Okay, so continuing here, L squared, rearranging the terms again, minus 100L plus 1600 is equal to 0. Okay, now, what are two factors of 1600 that will add up to a negative 100? That's a little bit harder to find. Okay, what are the factors of 1600 that will add up to a negative 100? So we're looking at the factors of this here. They'll add up to this. Okay, now, say we don't know. Okay, let's say at this stage of the game, you probably have not learned how to use the quadratic function, even though we can use the quadratic function to solve this. Okay, how do we do it? Well, if you remember completing the squares, we can use completing the squares here, right? Or we can factor. Some of you may be able to find two terms here that will factor, right? Find two factors of 1600 that will add up to a negative 100, right? Anybody? Well, think about it for a second, right? I'm going to make a guess. How about negative 20 and negative 80? Okay, let's try those. Okay, negative 80 and negative 20. Okay, negative will give me a positive. 0, 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 8 is 16. That's positive 1600. That's what I want. Right, so, right, we can use negative 80 and negative 20. So, what do we have? L, of course, again, you'll find that later it's going to be a little bit easier because you're going to use quadratic formula to factor these. So L minus 80 and L minus 20. Okay? We can double check here. L times L is L squared. L times negative 20 is negative 20L. Added to negative 80L gives me negative 100L. Negative 80 times negative 20 gives me positive 1600. So set that to be 0. So I have L. Set each of the term to be 0. L minus 80 is 0. L is 80. Right? And L minus 20 is 0. L is equal to 20. Okay, which one do we want? Well, let's check. So we are saying L is 80. Coming back to our equation here, our diagram, L is 80. So what is the width? It is 80, right? 800 divided by 80. So that would be 800 divided by 80, which is equal to 10. Okay? So let's test. 80 for the length, 10 for the width. Does that work? Well, the area is equal to 800, right? Length times width is 800 square meters, right? Now, let's check the second one, right? The total amount of fencing, is that equal to 100? So we have here 80, here 10, and here 10. That's equal to 100. So 80 works. 80 works, right? Now, we can also look at 20, right? Let's test 20. So 20, we use 20 here. What do we have? We have 800 divided by 20 gives you what? Well, let's try 800 divided by 20 gives you 40, right? So if the length is 20 and the width is 40, does it work? 20 times 40, is that equal to 800? 20 times 40, is that equal to 800? The answer is yes, right? Now, does the amount of fencing equal to 100? Well, if we do this 20, 40 and 40, 40 plus 40 is 80 plus 20 is actually 100. So in this case, both values will work. Okay? Any question on this one? I'll let you look at this one again and see if you have questions. Do send them to me in an email.